Good afternoon, Wendy. Just to introduce everyone to Wendy, it's Wendy Garcarz, who is writing in the Salonpreneur magazine. And Wendy is a business strategist. She's a futurist. She does amazing things. She's a published author with amazing books. But Wendy's writing in a magazine very much from her refinement, as you can see on her screen today, very much from her refinement background, which is an organisation that she's created that helps women that are slightly more mature in years develop businesses and just understand that they can continue to have value and be amazing business people into their later years. So Wendy, would you like to just say hello to everybody and just just sort of give us a little bit of a history about what Refirement's about, because I know your first article is very much about what Refirement is.
Yes, yeah. So hello everybody. Thanks for that lovely introduction. I've been a businesswoman for about 35 years. Before then I had a corporate career in learning and development and organisational development. I've worked for blue chip companies, public sector organisations, and I've done a lot of work in leadership development too. And as I've got older, I've been supporting businesses. But one of the things I started to notice is once I got past 55, people's attitudes towards me started to change. And not just individuals, but high street banks, investors, people that I networked with, all sorts of people. And it's this concept that people have that, and I think it's stereotyping, that
Mhm.
actually once you get beyond a certain age, you're expected to start to think about winding down, to
Yes.
slowing up, to not doing as much, and maybe to think about retiring.
Yeah.
And I started to talk to other people about this, and they said, I'm just not the sort of person to retire. That's not me." So I did a piece of research because I wanted to find out what people's lived experience was. And if I'm honest, Sue, and you know this because you were one of the ones
I
that
was one of the
filled the
respondents.
questionnaire in, but I'd have been really chuffed if a couple of hundred people had have wrote back to me and said, "Yeah, this is what I found." I was staggered. I had 1,600 women respond. It
Yeah.
was massive. And they said, and it wasn't just from the UK, it was from all over the world. And people said to me, this isn't just a UK problem. We live in a world of ageism. And
Yeah.
so people stop looking at you as somebody who's vibrant, somebody who's got ambition, somebody who's got purpose and passion after you reach a certain age. And that can't be right, because if you accept that, then the danger is that your retirement years, your later years, are lived in the guise of what somebody else thinks they should be and not what we want them to
Yeah.
be. So I decided we needed to change that. So I did the report, pulled the report together. Somebody read the report and said, this would make a great TED talk. So I managed to get accepted and I did a TED talk.
Just
And
so good.
from
And it's really, really worth just researching Wendy Garcarz's TED talk, because it's a really lovely just sort of like monologue about what this is all about and why it's important for women beyond, as I'm always being told by my husband, you're a woman of a certain age. And I think that cliche says.
Yeah, absolutely. It says everything, doesn't it?
Mm,
So when we did the TED Talk, then I had lots and lots of people who said, well, what are you going to do next? So I decided I'd start a global movement, as you do.
as you do.
And so that's where Refirement came from, really. So we're an organisation that is around supporting entrepreneurs and business owners in their later lives to ensure they live that life with passion and purpose. And that's about you making sure your retirement looks however you want it to look.
Mhm.
Um, and for some that might be, visiting a garden centre and drinking cheap coffee, or for some it might be around volunteering. But for lots of us, it's about continuing to run that business.
Yeah.
And we're building a community of fabulous, fabulous powerhouse women
Yeah.
who are not letting that number get in the way. And it's where our strapline comes from. We are an
Yeah.
organisation for women who want to rock but not in a chair.
Absolutely. And I think the thing I love about it as well is that, as much as that there is this whole thing of like, and I do think this yesterday I had to fill out a questionnaire, and I'm sure I haven't seen it in quite this way previously. And I was doing something about my pension, and it said, are you, tick the box, are you whatever age, this, that, the other? And the box I had to tick was 55 to 74. And it actually made me feel quite uncomfortable because I felt like I was being lumped in with old people. And even though I've got friends that are that age and I don't see them as old, but I'm going to turn 58 next week. And I don't want to be grouped with people that have retired, because I know I have the opportunity to retire. I wish I was in a position to retire, but I'm not. So I will be ending up working probably until my very late 60s, if not into my 70s. And plus, I think I'd get really bored. I think I would have to do something. I'm not going to be a person that can sit and rock in a chair. It's never going to happen. But I think this whole thing that we need to suddenly at 55, that there's this massive change, that just because you have an opportunity to retire means that you need to be considered as someone less than.
I agree with that. And I think for years we've been gaslighted into some of this stuff. You know, we've been gaslighted into believing that you really do slow down and you're not as good and you can't be doing all of those things like you did when you were younger. Well, quite frankly, that's rubbish.
No.
And I don't think, and I know this is quite controversial, but I don't think the menopause stuff has helped. Because in lots of cases, I see women who talk about menopause as though it's some sort of disease. It's a
Yeah.
stage of life.
Yeah.
And some women go through that very easily, and some women do go through that. I'm not diminishing the people who really struggle with menopause, but at the end of the day, we have to find a way of navigating that, because it's going to happen to you whether you want it to or not.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to limit
No.
what your ambition is, and I suppose really that's the message I want to give out. I mean, some of our members' examples are just fantastic, and if I look at your industry.
Mm.
One of the things that strikes me is if you have this massive group of women salon owners who
Mm.
have been there, done it, and got the t-shirt, who all buy into this stereotyping of, well, you've got to slow down, you've got to retire, where does that leave your industry?
Yeah. Well, there's a whole conversation. I mean, we've got at the moment, and one of the things that you talk about, and that I know is a big part of what you want to do with Refirement, is this wisdom bridge.
Yeah.
But our wisdom bridge is broken.
Yeah.
Because like you say, we've got all of these mature women, and I think as well, one of the other things that I know that you're quite an advocate of is that it isn't about just being 55. Like you can buy into this when you're 45, you can buy into this when
Absolutely.
you're 35, because you need to prepare for the fact that everyone's going to expect you to stop. And you need to prepare to not want to stop, because I know at my age, I don't want to stop. I'm going to be 58. I've got plans. I'm going nowhere. And but I think this whole thing of the wisdom bridge, of that transference of knowledge from the younger generation upwards and the older generation downwards, and to the generation in between, because there's generally going to be 3 generations in the workforce. So, but our middle generation's okay and our upper generation's okay. But what's coming into the industry is broken, because our apprenticeships are down to 6% of what they used to be. We've got a position where I think I was watching, we had a big select committee that our industry took part in recently for the small business and trade committee. And they were saying on there that by 2030, it's estimated there will be no apprentices left.
Yeah.
Now and especially in hair, less so in beauty, but in hair, that's the way in. And if that entry point's gone, because everybody's gone to work at home because there's no salons left. I mean,
But do you know what? Honestly,
storm of
we are sleepwalking into this, because whenever I'm seeing lots of stuff around at the moment who are talking about AI and about how AI is going to replace this job and this job will go because of AI. Singly, one of the industries that AI can't touch is yours.
Yeah.
You can't suddenly, expect an AI bot to cut your hair for you,
No.
or to paint your nails, or to give you skin treatments, or all of those things. The knowledge can be held there, but the physical job can't be.
No.
And
We can be supported by AI to enable us to do our jobs better.
Exactly.
But that human touch, and one of my friends, she has this phrase, human earring. And that whole point of that is that we are going to be here forever.
And I think that if you know that you're going to be here, there has to be a mechanism for you to be able to pass down the wisdom that you've gained. So if you've been a salon owner for 25 years or whatever, lots of things will have changed. So the products that you use will have changed, the styles will have changed, all of that. But one of the things that won't have changed is when you run a salon business, you learn how business functions. That
Mm.
fundamentally doesn't change.
Right.
But the danger is that if you've not got people who've been there, done it, and got the t-shirt, you are condemning the younger generation who are coming through and trying to do the salon thing. You're condemning them to make the same mistakes that you had to make in order to learn.
Yeah.
And it
And I think,
worries me because when you have that sort of lack of corporate memory, if you like,
yeah,
that exists, it's costly and it's wasteful for an
yeah,
industry to do that.
yeah,
And so anything that you can do to make sure that all of that fantastic wisdom that salon owners have gathered together over the years, there is a mechanism to pass that down. Why wouldn't you want to do that? It's a bit of a no-brainer,
yeah.
really.
And I think, I know for a lot of us that are kind of coming to 20 years plus, 30 years plus in the industry, we want to pass that down. But I think and there does seem to be, there's this real mismatch of the fact that we want to be able to pass that knowledge down. Historically, that knowledge was paid for. Nowadays, the younger generation don't seem to want to pay to have that knowledge that they want it gifted to them. And there's an element of like, we can all give certain amount of it free, but also there has to be a price for all of that commitment that we've given to this industry,
Yeah,
all
it
of the
does.
stuff that we have had to learn, and that, that we can pass down to make their lives easier. But then equally, when we bring AI into the situation, they can just go on Chat GPT now and say, how do I run a salon? And Chat GPT will give them a very theoretical idea of how to do that. It won't necessarily tell them the nuances of what client experience is and what client journey can be like when it's wrong, and how costly that can be to your
But
business.
I also think so that there are a couple of things people need to realise around AI. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a
Yeah,
fantastic tool. I use it in my business. I think used in the right place for the right context, it's fantastic. And it's great at improving your productivity. So
yeah,
I'm certainly not a naysayer as far as AI
yeah.
is concerned. But I think it has its limitations, and there are a
Mm,
couple of reasons for that. Firstly, it has its limitations because it is created by and large by American big industry,
mm,
and it carries a huge amount of bias.
yeah,
So whenever you ask it for an image, for example, you ask it
yeah,
for an image of a business owner, I guarantee you 9 times out of 10 it will produce one which is a
yeah,
male middle class white.
yeah,
So we
absolutely.
know that these algorithms that they're using are biased.
Yeah,
If that's the case, what it means is that anything that it produces is going to have its limitations. It won't cover, it won't be as comprehensive as you
no,
want it to be.
no,
And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that it is a giant search engine. And the
yeah,
beauty of it is it can data crunch fantastic quantities of data in really, really short time. So
yeah,
it's convenient. But what none of it will contain is the human touch.
yeah,
Now everybody of my generation knows that your relationship with your hairdresser is unique. You
yeah,
talk to them about all sorts of stuff. There is a human element because the relationship you have is so intimate.
yeah, absolutely.
They've got body contact with you, they're shaping your image. And so this is an incredibly valuable and intimate relationship.
The trust,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
the trust.
absolutely. With the
Yeah,
best will in the world, no AI has managed to nail that yet. So
no,
I think that what we need to be doing is really appreciating the expertise that it may have taken us decades
mm,
to develop, but if we don't value it, we
yeah,
can't expect anybody else to.
no,
That there is in the research that I did, there was definitely a common thread that said once they get to that age, lots of women want to give back. They want to say, my career's given me so much in all sorts of ways, and it's my turn now to pay that
yeah,
forward. And of course, the classic way of doing that in your industry was apprenticeships.
yeah, yeah. It is, I mean, when I did have my salon, I tried a few times to do apprenticeships, and it's a challenging thing to do because quite often they're the apprentices don't always get, I think they think they're going to get an easy ride, and it actually isn't like that,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you've literally got to do the sweeping up, and you've got to do the mopping, and you've got to do the tidying, and you've got to make the tea, and because that you've got to earn your stripes. There's no way around it. And I know there was quite often a lot of dissatisfaction amongst my apprentices that they would be asked to do that, and they couldn't just walk in and start doing treatments. But it's not, you have got to learn from the bottom up, and we all had to do it. Even, I mean, I went into my industry as a mature student, but I still, when I went and did my work experience, I still was like, yeah, can you sweep that floor? Can you go and make the tea? Can you clean that wax pot? And I still had to do all those really mundane, horrible jobs that even now, I still don't enjoy. But eventually you learn to take pride in the fact that that wax pot's sparkling, and
yeah.
no one else has made that wax pot sparkle like that. And
That's absolutely.
yeah.
It reminds me of a story I watched. I mean, I'm going back again a few decades, but Muhammad Ali was,
Mm.
a world class boxer, and he was being interviewed by Parkinson, and Parkinson said to him, "If you are this, this world class boxer, everybody knows who you are, you're world champion, but what would you have been if you hadn't have been a boxer? If you couldn't have boxed, what would you have been?" And he said, "Oh, it doesn't really matter. If I'd have been a road sweeper or if I'd have been a school janitor, I would have been the world's best school janitor." And I do think, again, one of the things that really I find quite troubling is that the whole idea that you just know, people just know customer service. Well, they don't. They don't, because it's customer experience, not
Yeah.
service.
Yeah.
And the experiences that you have, if you're using the same therapist that you used, 15 years ago, you're doing that for a reason, and it's because of the customer experience that you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
If you go back to the same place for your holidays year after year, you do that because of the customer experience that you get.
Yeah.
And if we're not careful, particularly where there is a really strong link between practitioner and customer, we will lose that and we will be poorer for it,
Yeah.
definitely.
And it is, and I think just being able to pass down that, the fastidiousness that's necessary to deliver that perfect experience. And like, you're not going to get it perfect all of the time, to know that you're getting it right, it's not slightly off, and that, because the journey and experience, to me, they're like a Venn diagram. They're not the same thing. They're two completely different
Yeah,
things that just meet
yeah,
in the middle. And I think that we are now at risk of not being able to pass that knowledge down, because the people, there's no staff left. Everybody's
yeah,
at home,
yeah,
and
I'd agree with that.
they've got to learn that the value of I mean, as much as it isn't about customer service, it is about the experience, but the service you put into that experience is what makes those people buy from you. And if we can't share that knowledge in the way that we would have done in our salons when we had a team of staff, or a team of whoever's there, whatever, because there's so many different models now of hybrid this and hybrid that, and self-employed models, and then we've got a lot of issues in the industry. But if you can't pass that down, because it's like osmosis, isn't it? It's like so much of it is just, you don't stand there going, okay, it's Monday morning, and now we're going to teach you how to lay up a bed, and how to make feel comfortable on the client feel comfortable on that beauty bed. It isn't necessarily, but the people, the juniors and the staff that are learning and coming through, watch that repetitive process over a period of years, and
Yeah.
they learn, and they tweak how they do it, because they, I still go for massages now and stuff, and still go to different salons, and I will still pick up bits and just go, I'm putting that into mine.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, years and years ago, I trained as an aromatherapist,
Oh,
and
did you?
and
Didn't
I
know.
remember it instinctively. I remember the my first paying client,
Yeah.
and it was such a weird experience because I'd done all of the theory and I'd passed all of my exams, and I'd done sample things, but it was usually in group sessions because we were all
Yeah.
together as students. And this was the first time it was a sort of that first time in a salon environment with just myself and the client. And this lady had come to me. She wanted a relaxation massage. She was having trouble with anxiety. She was having difficulty managing anxiety. So I mixed up, did a full history, mixed the blend up, and started to use it with her. and it was almost, it was a weird, almost out of body experience that I had. And as I was massaging her, I started to feel this emotion welling up in me. And I was in minutes, I was in floods of tears, and I had no idea why. No idea why.
Yeah,
Because I was fine. And what
yeah.
I hadn't realised was, because this was the first really intimate massage that I'd done, it was transference from her. I had no idea that could have happened. And what worries me is that if we only believe the stuff that we read in theory books or IR, you might learn the technique of something that would never have been explained. And actually, I'm not sure that if I'd have read it, I'd have believed it anyway. When
No.
I worked in corporate settings, we used to have two sorts of people. So you could see people who'd been at the same, doing the same job for 17 years. The first person would genuinely have 17 years of experience.
Yeah.
The second person would have 1 year of experience that they'd just repeated 17 times.
Yeah,
And you could tell the difference. And
definitely.
that's the danger, that if you don't have that hand holding, if you don't have that mechanism where you can hand that level of expertise and wisdom from one to another, where does it go?
Yeah,
And you may be able to learn how to do that particular cut, or that particular colour, or that particular nail treatment. You may be able to learn that. But will you really learn it at that molecular level?
yeah,
You know, all
yeah,
of the context that goes with that. Will you really know
yeah.
that? Or will you just be copying what you see by rote and not questioning anything?
Yeah. And I think one of the other things that I just want to add in here is just that there's this whole idea behind the fact that, like, you know, when you're in a salon environment and you've got a busy team, as the apprentice, you know, you're walking around sweeping up stuff and you're watching what your older, more experienced stylists and therapists are doing, and they take those to the counter to make their payment or whatever. And you have that, like, the walk of learning kind of thing as they go through the salon, and that watching and hear, and then someone says, oh, you know, that's the most amazing cut, or that's the most amazing color, or how did you do those nails? And just watching and learning to appreciate the success, learning to appreciate the skill that's gone into it, and actually wanting to be able to emulate that. And I think now we have a situation where there's so many professionals coming out of a college environment, going into salon, or not going into salons. That's the biggest problem. They're coming straight from college and becoming a self-employed person, or becoming an entrepreneur or an influencer or whatever name they want to put on it now. And they are missing out that whole learning, a bit like that learning time, where that you take that information, that year's worth of experience, and you go and learn, and you become the 17 years of experience person. And what we have potentially about to happen is that they've got that little bit of experience that they learn in their first year of being self-employed, and they just repeat, rinse and
Yeah,
repeat,
yeah,
rinse and
that's
repeat.
absolutely right.
And they won't necessarily take on more education, because they may, if they're not being successful enough, they won't be putting money aside to pay for further education, which would have been paid for if they were, sorry, one of my dogs is going mad, that would have been paid for in a salon environment. And so they're not reinvesting in their futures. Oh, it's honestly, Wendy, it's so difficult.
But
Without
I
that
think part of me, for
hierarchy.
me, it's about making sure that women, older, later life entrepreneurs, value that experience and recognize that it has a value, not just an intrinsic value, you know, not just a physical value, monetary value. But it's so much more than that, because
Yeah,
actually you're preparing the next generation.
yeah,
And so I'm 65 now, so I'm starting to think around what my legacy is going to be, and how I want to make a difference. That's
yeah,
why I do what I do. I wanted, whatever I chose to do in my field, I wanted to make a difference. And I have the opportunity to think about what that legacy is going to be now. But that's
yeah.
not going to happen unless I make it happen. And
No,
I won't make it happen if I don't value the wisdom and the expertise and all of the knowledge that I've accrued in my lifetime. So it starts with us. If we can't, if we see this later life as this process of not lacking in value, of not being able to make a contribution, of, you know, just being tired and ready to turn our back on it, then the cost of that is all of that knowledge that is in your head you take with you.
Yeah, and it is, and it's partly why the magazine is so important to me, is because, you know, there's this like collaboration of all of us that mainly are more mature. We do have our very lovely token Ella, who's in her 20s, but she's doing that bit of pushing it back the other way, and it's one of the reasons I'm so glad I've got her on board, because she's like, every now and again I'm just like, how do I do this? I'm on Instagram, nothing's working, help me. And she can help me. But I do think it is that whole, you know, we are in a position where we've got this experience that we can kind of share.
Yeah.
And that a lot of the audience that we're sharing it to, I mean, I know from sort of like the, you know, seeing some of the people I know that have bought the magazine, we are talking to that younger, you know, not necessarily to 20-year-olds, but it is disseminating. And I think that to me is one of the most important things. And I've just been reading a book called The Second Mountain. Oh, and it's the most amazing book, and it talks about this, you know, we go into this valley, you know, probably in our sort of 40s, we sort of go to this, like, what are we doing with our lives and everything, and we come out and we actually end up doing something that's far more community based and about that whole sharing of knowledge and information and that giving back. And I think that
it's absolutely crucial. And we reach that time. When we reach that time is different for everybody.
yeah,
So some people, you know, some people reach that, well, is this all there is moment? Some people reach that in their 40s, some in their 50s, some in their 60s. I'm dealing with 80-year-olds that still haven't reached that because they're still busy loving life and doing what they want to do. But I think it's being aware of when that happens to you and then saying, okay, well, what am I going to do with that?
yeah,
And my big message to older entrepreneurs is don't be gaslighted into believing, if you're not ready to do this, to, you know, to hang up your boots and go quietly into the night, don't be gaslighted into believing that you are ready.
no, just because the retirement age and the state pension arrives at 67 doesn't mean you I mean, you can take it.
And of course, at the moment, I mean, there was a report last week from Liz Kendall who talked about the fact that the likelihood is in our lifetime that retirement age will be 74.
Which just seems mad, especially for someone like my husband, who's like a physical worker. I mean, he's already having difficulties in his late 50s. And for physical workers, it's going to be more difficult. I mean, even for me, like my hands hurt when I've done a lot of massage and stuff now. I've got problems with my thumbs. I'm quite sure that I've probably got the beginnings of arthritis and stuff going on in them. And at some point, I won't be able to work in that way. But there's always elbows and palm. There's ways around it.
Yeah, there are. There absolutely
you can utilize it. But I just think it's a really important thing that we need to recognize, that you don't have to hang. Yeah, you really don't have to hang your shoes. What's it called? Your boots up.
Your boots up.
Yeah. Brain went then. One of those moments. But it's a very interesting concept, isn't it? That we are expected to a degree to continue. And I think that entrepreneurism allows you that flexibility to manage your life in the way you want to.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think it's about knowing that you have the freedom to make that look like whatever you want it to look like. I mean, I honestly, wake up every day. I only do things that light my fire. I have kicked out of my life anything that doesn't bring me joy.
Yeah.
And I think at 65 I've earned the right to do that. But what it does mean is that because I don't stand any nonsense anymore, and because the things that don't serve me are not in my life anymore, I seem to have more energy, because everything that I do is something that really interests me and things that I think I can contribute to. That is the most phenomenal feeling to wake up to every morning.
Absolutely. And I think we need more of it, definitely, don't we?
Yeah.
We should probably draw this to a close, though. But thank you. Oh, table. Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat. And as always, it's always a fascinating conversation with you, Wendy. And I look forward to many more of those conversations as we go through the magazine.
I'm looking forward to continuing my my contributions.
And I can't wait to see what your next article is going to be about. It's I just love having all these people together, and whether we're sharing it to someone that's 65 and needs to hear it, whether we're sharing it to someone that's 25 and needs to hear it, there's someone somewhere will get value out of what's in the magazine, which is what's the most important thing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.